sponsored by Local Touch Online, a free online magazine that has an exclusive article by Pop Culture Geekery every month. This episode is sponsored by Hill Country Comic-Con. Hill Country Comic-Con is here to promote fun, art, literacy, and imagination through pop culture and comics. It will be held April 4th and 5th at the New Braunfels Convention Center. Go to hillcountrycomiccon.com to get your tickets today. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Geekery. I'm Joe Solis, and as you can clearly see, I am not in our home studio tonight. We are actually traveling right now. We're in Dallas. We're getting ready to go to All-Con tomorrow. And so I just had to throw this quick setup together, so I apologize for the lighting and the lack of a nerdy backdrop. I'll probably just throw up the movie poster here, so that way you all can have something to look at. That's not me. But so, you know, this week me and my wife were on spring break because she's a teacher, and so we've been putting out a lot of content this week. You know, we had our surprise video from our friend Shannon and from Dice Tower West. We had the next installment of our collaboration with Chuck Pino with Chuck's Comic Corner, and so now I wanted to get this out because the rest of the weekend is going to be pretty busy for us, and I also wanted to put this out there to hopefully encourage people to watch this movie, even though it's not a perfect movie, but we'll go into that. So tonight I'm talking about the new movie Bloodshot, which is starring Vin Diesel as the title character. So the first half of this video will be no spoilers, and then there'll be a clear mark where the spoilers begin. I'm going to try to keep this kind of short just because of time. It's kind of late when I just got out of the movie, and we do have to go to the convention in the morning. But anyway, so basically just a quick rundown of my history with this character, because of those of you who followed the show know that I love comics. I've been following them since the 90s, since I was a teenager. And with Bloodshot, you know, he's part of Valiant Comics, which actually launched in the 90s. And so there was an iteration of Bloodshot that came out during that first run. At that time, my experience with the character was kind of secondhand, because the Valiant characters that I was drawn to was like X-O Man of War and Ninjak, and at the time when he belonged to Valiant with Turok. But Bloodshot was one of those that I only ever saw like in crossovers or things like that, so never really got to read his actual series. But a friend of mine loved reading all the original stuff, so I kind of got to learn about the character vicariously through him. And of course, fast forward to the 2012 relaunch of Valiant Comics, and with that one, I did jump on from the beginning as they released, you know, XO, Archer and Armstrong, and then Bloodshot. I forget the order. But I followed Bloodshot from there all the way until I believe Bloodshot Reborn. A little trivia: I actually used to be part of a podcast. I've been a part of three different podcasts that are all comic based. One of them was called Valiant Future. So Paul, who was the one who started that, invited me on, and we did that for a few months. I don't know if it went over a year. And then when Paul decided not to do the show anymore, that's pretty much when I stopped collecting Valiant, unfortunately, because I really do like this universe, and that's why I wanted this movie to do really good, because I would like it to expand into its own universe. But you know, unfortunately right now, it's not just the movie itself, but of course there's so many world factors right now keeping people from going to the theaters. And I'm hoping that that's not one of the things that hurts the movie. But, you know, we'll say for opening night, it was pretty dead in the theater that I was in. So basic idea of the movie, like I said, no spoilers. You know, Ray Garrison is a soldier. According to the trailer, I'll just stick to stuff they showed in the trailer. You know, he gets killed in action. He gets brought back to life as part of this program from the organization called Rising Spirit, which is from the comics. So I thought that was pretty cool that they got included here. And so they basically bring him back to life with these, you know, little technology they called nanites, which basically, can repair his body no matter how much damage he takes. And again, also what they showed in the trailer is that in doing so, they are messing with Rey's memories. So that's the aspect I actually kind of had forgotten going into the movie. And so, I tried not to read anybody else's reviews. I started to read one and I saw it was real negative, so I stopped. But one reviewer, his opening sentence was about how cliche the beginning was. I will say that they do go back and make that make sense. And so towards the middle of the movie, you get a nice little, not necessarily a twist. I mean, you could see it coming, especially if you saw the trailers, but it did remind me what the premise is here, like what they're really trying to do to Bloodshot. So it's basically an origin story of, how he became this character. Vin Diesel, like I said, is in the title role. To me, when Vin Diesel's one of those actors, I've never really seen him in anything that I didn't like, because he pretty much is just Vin Diesel all the time, even when he plays Groot. But I think he did good. He's just one of those, he just gave, the best performance that he could. The script, it doesn't really take any chances, I guess. And it's not really concerned with setting up the world, which is fine. They can't all be the Marvel movies, where they're setting it up. Although that would be nice if every universe went in with a plan. So all in all with that, it is a pretty self-contained movie. We get one other character that I recognize the name from the comics. I'll talk about him in spoilers. Other than that, I believe the other characters were original, because I didn't recognize any of them or any of their names, any of their designs, anything like that. So yeah, like I said, I'm just going to keep this opening part pretty short. Overall, like I said, it's an enjoyable movie. I know I struggle to say that. It is. It's just, I think it's getting a lot of hate from some of the other critics because they're complaining about how plain it is, and that part I do have to kind of agree. There's just nothing. Oh, okay, I know the best way to describe it. Yeah, how when Venom came out, the critics were talking about, well, this movie feels like it should have come out in the 90s. You can probably say that about Bloodshot as well, with much better effects. But yeah, it just, which is ironic because that's when the character came out. So, but it's not necessarily that they're going for that. As far as my rating, I'm just going to settle. Oh, by the way, with our rating system, 1 through 10, for us, a 5 is an average movie. It's one of those, you watch it, you're pretty much done with it. It's not a harsher rating for us as it is for everybody else. But that's what I would have to settle on with this one, a 5 out of 10. Just because it was just very much there. I enjoyed some aspects of it, but it just never really brought it, much higher than that. I mean, at the middle part with the twist, I wanted to kind of kick it up to a 6, but then I was like, no, I'm just kind of trying to forgive it. But, there's so many superhero movies at this point. There's so many great examples for studios to point at. I mean, even Sony themselves, this is coming from Sony, which of course has had a lot of success with Spider-Man. But of course, Marvel, has had their hand in that as well. So anyway, I will say, if you're a Vin Diesel fan, or if you're a fan of the Valiant Universe, I would say check it out, because especially if you're a fan of the Valiant Universe, because if you want there to even be a chance of a cinematic universe, if this one doesn't do well, then they're not going to move on to the others. I personally would have loved to have seen X-O Man of War first, but that's just me, because his comic came first in the relaunch, and he's, probably my favorite Valiant character. But anyway, yeah, I would just say, if you can, go out and check it out. If you're not a Vin Diesel fan or not a Valiant fan, you may just see it as a kind of mindless action movie with a interesting little premise. So anyway, so for now, that's going to be the non-spoiler section. So before we move on to spoilers, I just want to say thanks to everybody who subscribed. I've gotten a lot of great views this week, like I said, from all the different videos we've put out. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Follow us on all the other social medias, because I post, trailers and other movie news that comes out. And if you like this video, hit like. And if you don't agree with me on this movie, or you think it's even worse than I said, please feel free to comment below. We can discuss it there. But until then, here come the spoilers. All right, so if you're still here, that means you've either seen the movie and you don't mind the spoilers, or you haven't seen it yet and you want to know what's spoiled to decide whether or not to go see it. So this is probably going to be a reverse of what it normally is, because that opening one non-spoiler section was a lot longer than I thought I was going to talk. But there's really not too much to spoil per se. I mean, the basic premise of the setup, is that the opening, what people had complained about was too cliche, was done on purpose, because Rising Spirit is putting those fake memories in his mind. So basically, the one project manager, I believe his name is Harding, which I believe is played by Guy Pearce, I have to double check that. He wants revenge, I guess, on his partners, and he has a list of them. And so every time he wants to send Bloodshot out to kill one of them, he has this preset memory of when Bloodshot's wife was quote-unquote killed, and every time he changes the face of the killer to be the face of one of his partners. So that way, in real life, when Bloodshot is unleashed, he goes and kills that person because he thinks they killed his wife. So that was the strongest thing that this movie had going for it. That was a pretty interesting little setup, but we do take a while to get there. You actually have to make it through the whole first simulation, which you don't know is one at the time, to get there. And then at that point, you've got to decide if you're going to forgive what you just watched, because yeah, I can see how it is very cliche. But beyond that, they do use the character called Axe. I don't think he's a direct translation of the character from the comics, but I do know that I remember him from X Amount of War, and I know he made other appearances. And the running joke I remember with him was that, they usually thought they killed him, and then he would always come back, and he usually would be more and more enhanced. Here, he's just one of the partners who gets killed, so I don't know that we'll ever get back to him or not. Other than him, all the other characters seem like they were new. There's the female character, KT, and then she had two other partners in the team. One guy that was blinded, because all these characters have been injured soldiers in some capacity, and the ones that didn't straight up die, Harding was able to repair them and make them useful again. But of course, Bloodshot is his crowning achievement, because he's the only one who ever survived the procedure of coming back from the dead, basically. After that, I mean, it just becomes a discovery story of Bloodshot discovering the truth about what's happening, and his revenge thoughts turn towards Harding when he finally figures it out. The last guy he fights against is one of the soldiers, and he already had some cybernetic legs because he had lost his original legs, but then they give him this weird kind of spider-like exoskeleton. Well, I say spider, it only had two arms, but it had that kind of look to it. But it just was very anticlimactic. It just was not a great last villain to fight. And that's the thing, is that, I was trying to think back, even in the modern run, I vaguely remember some of the characters that Bloodshot fought, but they always seem to be throwaway. He doesn't seem to have any kind of like reoccurring menace other than the organization that is Rising Spirit. So, there obviously is no plan for a Valiant universe on film. I know there would like to be. I know at one point they did have a Harbinger lined up to happen after this, and then they were supposed to lead into a crossover movie, which would have been good. I think the Harbinger kids would have been, a better movie, and then of course crossing over would have been better. But Bloodshot, just as a character, I mean, yeah, he he can hold his own, but a lot of it is just riding on that you're trying to go with him on this journey of trying to figure stuff out. And then, you know, it's always a question of what's real and what's not, because they're always messing with his head. So, so yeah, I just, you know, I don't want to say I'm disappointed. I am, but I kind of was expecting this based on the trailers. And so that's why my expectations were not set too high. Maybe that's not why I'm not being as harsh on it as some critics are. Oh, there is no end of credits scene, by the way, so no reason to stay after the credits roll. Other than that, I mean, I know they did a good job of like trying to promote it. You know, on the red carpet, they were all holding the Bloodshot graphic novels, and so you know, I can tell that this crew, you know, has an investment in this. But again, there's just so many things going on right now, and with people not wanting to go out right now, I think may hurt the movie unless it gets a second life on streaming and Blu-ray, but that remains to be seen. So anyway, you know, I'm just going to wrap up there because, like I said, there's really nothing else to spoil. Tell me what you guys think, especially you diehard Valiant fans. I know my same friend that I mentioned, they introduced me to the 90s Bloodshot. He was just not having this movie, so he's not even going to bother with it. He'll probably watch it later, and that's what I'm afraid is going to happen with a lot of Valiant fans. But anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. Thanks for being patient with, you know, us having a different setting just for this episode. You know, next week we'll be back. We'll have some footage from AllCon, hopefully. And until then, be safe out there with all the stuff that's going on. And thanks again for subscribing, and we will see you guys next time.